You're listening to the Fezcast, produced on behalf of the Saracen Supporters Association and featuring the independent thoughts, rants and rambles of Saracens fans and special guests. If you'd like your opinion to be heard on the show, you can find the Fezcast on Facebook or Fezcast_SSA on Instagram and whatever Twitter is known as these days. But for now, enjoy this week's show.
You're listening to the Fezcast.
Well, hello everybody and welcome to our next edition of the Fezcast. And joining me tonight is Barry. He's back after a little bit of a break, and Sam's back after quite a big break. I mean, this is your quarterly appearance on the Fezcast, isn't it, Sam?
Yeah, I've already booked myself in for, what would it be, June, July?
Yeah, just after the final probably, hopefully,
yeah.
You know. There we go. But yeah, no, good to see you, Sam. How are you keeping, mate?
All good. I'm very excited for Saturday.
Oh, absolutely. Well, we're going to talk about Saturday in our last part. We got a packed show. And big thanks to Ollie at the club, because he got me for an interview on Friday night. So really interesting. I spoke to Alex Lozowski. So we're going to do a two-part interview with Loz, and great talking about his career, and a couple of questions that came in from our WhatsApp group as well, which we threw out to him. So that'll be the next part one, and then we'll do a little bit of reaction to that, do a bit of review of the Six Nations, and then I talked to him about the Showdown as well, and playing at the Spurs Stadium, which, as much as it's in Indian country for me, being a West Ham fan, you know, and going into enemy territory, as it were. Really looking forward to that, as you say. And yeah, Barry, it's going to be a big weekend coming up, but after a massive weekend on last weekend.
Yeah, last weekend was obviously Super Saturday and three great games. But I mean, the whole of the Six Nations has been brilliant for me. But it'll be nice to get back to actually attending men's rugby. I seem to remember that was a thing back in the day.
Well, absolutely it was, wasn't it? Well, look, let's play in the first interview with Alex.
This is the Fezcast.
Well, I'm very pleased for our big interview this week on the Fezcast to be chatting to someone who, wow, now a senior player at the club. Been with us since 2016, I think, coming up for 200 appearances. According to Wikipedia, nearly 600 points as well, which wasn't a pretty good thing, but won 3 Premiership titles and 2 Champions Cup titles with Saracens. Welcome to the Fezcast. Alex Lozowski, how are you doing, Alex?
I'm good, thank you. Cheers for having me on.
Oh, absolutely. Well, we've been asking for you for a little while, and yeah, and part two, you being a Spurs fan, you know, and the Showdown coming up, you were the ideal person to speak to. But beforehand, we wanted to have a little chat with you about your career at Saracens, your time. But first of all, I mean, obviously this season's been a bit of a wipeout for you, getting a pretty bad injury early on. How are things? How are you? How's the injury coming along?
Yeah, it's been coming along pretty well, actually. I haven't had too many problems so far with it. Obviously, I had the surgery at the end of November, beginning of December. So, yeah, I'm sort of, 3 or 4 months into that now. And, yeah, it's just been hard work, but also, in a way, it's been enjoyable to see how things have progressed quite well as the weeks and months have gone on, and I should be back doing some running on the grass in the next couple of weeks now. So that's something to look forward to.
Well, absolutely. I mean, I must know how you feel. I mean, I've got a problem at the moment with my Achilles tendon, which means I can't run, and I've had to defer a couple of marathons this year, and not being able to do anything, I suppose, particularly for yourself. I mean, this must be the first really sort of like major injury and major, time out of the game that you've had in your career. I mean, how was that mentally, if nothing else?
Yeah, I think you're right. Really, I'd managed to avoid a real bad injury for 10 years, to be honest with you. I think the most amount of games that I'd missed before now from an injury would have been 2 or 3 weekends from like a hamstring injury or like an ankle injury, which was never too serious. So sort of trying to look at the bigger picture, I've been pretty lucky to not have too many injuries, and now I suppose it's part of sport, isn't it? That you expect at some point to be out of an injury, and it's happened to me now. Which is it's disappointing, but I feel like I've handled it quite well, and I've just been trying to be quite diligent with it, get on with it, and do all the right things whilst I'm in training, doing my rehab, but also at home as well, sort of icing and these types of things, just to hopefully come back as quick as I can. So I've tried to look at it as like a bigger picture, and so far, touch wood, it's been going quite well.
I mean, I suppose that's the other question. I mean, what sort of person are you? Are you a person who just said, right, okay, this is an enforced break, I'm going to get away from rugby, clear my head of the game? Or are you the person who's been sat there, you've had an operation, and you've got the iPad there and you're watching every game you possibly can do?
I'm probably somewhere in the middle. I wouldn't miss a Sarries game, of course. I've watched every game that the guys have played since I've done my injury. But yeah, I suppose that there's times where I do find it frustrating. I have missed playing, but I think I haven't got myself too down in the dumps about that. Whilst it's been going on, I'll probably try and think of it in a different way, which is thinking about how much I, do really have fun doing what I do, being in the team, and maybe trying to be a bit more grateful for that going forward. And yeah, I guess it just makes me want to play more, and maybe wants me to play for longer. Hopefully, I'll be able to come back from the injury feeling pretty strong physically, and I guess mentally refreshed, and that will allow me to play for as long as possible, maybe longer than what I would have done if I hadn't got injured. So those are the types of things that I'm trying to tell myself to keep myself to keep my head up and stuff. So yeah, we'll see. But I've definitely not been too down in the dumps.
Well, excellent. That's good to see. And I mean, I suppose this leads us on to our next question. And this is the big question that we've all been talking about. We've been talking about it on the Fezcast for a little while. Obviously, the person who gets mentioned on the Fezcast more than anybody else is the skipper, Owen. And, the decision's been made. He's off to Racing next season, which leaves an opening at 10 and also a opening in leadership, which you now, as a senior player, been at the club sort of 8 seasons now, there's lots of opportunities. The question everybody's saying, lots of people are saying, you're an ideal fit. You went to Montpellier, you played 10 at Montpellier quite a lot and did very, very well. Is that something that maybe you're sticking your hand in the air and saying, there's an opportunity there, Mark and Joe, and, I can stand up? Or is it just a case of you're waiting for the club to come to you and say, or maybe not say, are you happy playing in the 13 shirt or whatever?
Yeah, I mean, I think, firstly, I've always, I know that I do enjoy doing that role, playing centre, and I feel like I've done quite well over the years in that position. And as I said, I've got a lot of fulfilment out of doing that job for the team over the years. Played in all those sort of semi-finals and finals. So yeah, and then I think obviously with Owen leaving, there is the club do need to figure out what to do in that sense and who's going to play in that position. And I've always sort of said to Mark, and this has been a sort of consistent thing that I've said to Mark over the years, which has been, I'll do what the team needs me to do. I've played 10 before. Obviously, I've played centre, I've played wing, I've played fullback. So especially with those times when I was playing on the wing, I think I was trying to be a good team player, I suppose. And so what I'm saying is I've always been tried to be the person who can be relied on to do what the team needs me to do. So if it means next season that that's playing in a different position and doing a different role, then that's something that I'd crack on with. So yeah, there's no sort of bad outcome here. We'll just have to see how it unfolds and see in what direction the club decide to go in.
Well, indeed. Well, that leads us on to a question that comes from one of the Fezcast team. Well, actually, our junior member of the Fezcast team, John's son, Charlie Mannings, he's come up with a couple of questions he'd like to ask. And actually, I mean, for me personally, we kind of been talking about a performance for you, which was Bristol away, the start of last season when you did play at 10 and you got man of the match on the telly and everything, if I remember correctly. But Charlie's asking, well, in your career as a Saracen, in the shirt, what's your favourite moment and what's your favourite match?
Well, that's a good one. My favourite. Oh, what's my favourite moment? A moment that probably stands out to me was in Newcastle in 2019 final against Leinster, and it was very tight. And I was standing behind the scrum when Billy picked it up, and just decided that he was going to score and put us in the lead. And I think in that moment, there's a long way to go. There's a long way to go in the game, but in that moment, it's like a bit of a feeling of relief and just ecstasy, really. And I remember just jumping around, and for sort of 10 seconds, everyone lost their mind because it was a great try and it put us in the lead. And we knew that after that moment, we were in a great position to win, come back, having been behind, to having come back and win the game. So I think that's one of my favourite moments, on being on the field with the other players. And my favourite game, I can't really say Leinster final now because I've already used it in my favourite moment. The Bristol one definitely stands out. I think, well, basically, what I'll say is that the finals obviously will stand out because they're great memories. But sometimes the games where we've maybe been a bit under the cosh, or we're missing a few players, and we've managed to get results like that Bristol game.
Yeah.
There was Harlequins away a couple of years ago as well, where we've won. But my favourite game would probably be. I think my favourite game probably actually was Harlequins away. This was quite a few years ago, though. I think it might have been 2018.
Right. Yeah.
And Billy, it was a very tight game again. Billy scored in the corner. Actually, Billy scored another try. So those tight away games are very and you come out and you get a big win. They're great. They're great. So I'll go with Harlequins away.
Well, it's quite interesting actually that you've picked ones where other people have done the spectacular thing as opposed to yourself, which I suppose feeds into that whole attitude of it being a team and Saracens being such a team. And I mean, you went away to Montpellier for a season after the relegation and everything, but always, I assume it was, you wanted to come back. And I mean, how did that help you as a player, having that different experience for that year and then coming back and meeting back up with the likes of Nick Tompkins, who also went on loan, and Nick Ezekwe and Alex Gooden and whatever?
Yeah, I think in looking back on it, it was a great thing to do. I think at the time there were times where it was difficult. We were actually losing quite a lot of games, and with the players that we had in the team, the expectation from within and also from supporters and I suppose the French rugby public was pretty enormous, given the fact that we had some of the players that we had, and we definitely underperformed in the first half of the season, which was difficult to deal with at times, and we were criticised quite heavily. But in the end, we turned it round and we changed the way we were playing a little bit. Obviously, I had to make the switch. Obviously, I had been planning to play centre, but then Andre Pollard picked up the same injury that I picked up now, actually, which kept him out for the season or until towards the end of the season. So I had to sort of make that adjustment. So there's definitely a few challenges along the way. But in the end, to win the Challenge Cup final in Twickenham against Leicester, we've got some really good memories of it. And, I think I really did enjoy it most of the time. And also, I suppose it made me really appreciate Saracens as well, because it was different. And I think I was able to look back on it and reflect and feel like that, I'm pretty lucky to be involved at Saracens as well. So it made me a bit more grateful to be able to call Saracens home.
Well, indeed. Well, I mean, absolutely. And I mean, it's great to see you come back and, and all the players, how you developed and everything. Another colleague on the Fezcast got a question as well, similar to sort of like Charlie's in a way, but Sam would like to know. I mean, he said, you talked about Montpellier. Obviously, you came to us from Wasps. You played at Leeds. You've played for England, 5 caps, and we'll touch that on in a minute. But he wants to know, who's the best player you've played with, and who's the best player you've played against?
I was asked this the other day actually, and I've played with some great players. I've been lucky in that sense to have played with some brilliant players. I think probably the one that really stands out to me was George Smith.
Right.
And I think the back row that I can put together for my dream team of George Smith, Scott Berger, and Billy is a pretty good one. And I think the other two, Billy probably only misses out really on that just now, because I put him down as my favourite moment, the try he scored. So I think on another day it could easily have been Billy picking that up as the best player I've ever played with. But George was also, I was a young player, and I was very in awe of him. Sort of growing up watching him, and I couldn't quite believe that I was playing in the same team as him. And even that, he was an older player by then. I think in his mid-30s, but just wow, he was an incredible player. And definitely lucky to have played that guy. And then the best player I've played against, I think. I mean, I'd probably have to go with someone like Nonu.
Right.
He was a bit older by the time I was playing against him, but he was still, very capable of doing an amazing job when he could do everything. So I think his individual skill set, and I suppose as well, Faz would definitely come into that as conversation too, given that he's really quite an amazing rugby player. Given his skill set is incredible, so all the things that he's able to do on a rugby field, and all the things that he's able to execute in himself is quite amazing, really. And then also his ability on top of that to get the whole team playing the way that he needs them to play. And it's not just what he's able to do himself; it's what he can get out of his teammates, and how he can push them and get them to be better. Which again makes it's such a hard question for me. But those 3 guys would stand out for me.
Okay, and just on the back of that, just to change it slightly around. I mean, we talked last week. I mean, the great news about Juan Martin and Luca re-signing, and we got some youngsters coming through and people re-signing. We've seen the likes of Ben Earl and Andy Christie really stepping up in the international game over the last few weeks. Is there any player that you think is going to be, something special? One of the younger players coming through now that you're looking at and going, do you know what? He's going to be something a bit good.
Yeah, I think there's a few. I suppose as you mentioned there, Ben and Andy have done really, really well during the Six Nations, and I suppose announced themselves in a way. So people kind of know about those guys already now. So maybe that's not the kind of answer you're looking for, as you mentioned them already. But and even someone like Theo Dan, who, you know, if you'd have asked me a year and a half ago, he'd be the one I'd say probably, looking at what he is capable of and his sort of physical attributes, you could see that he had like a big future in rugby, and that he'd go on and do really, really well. But now he's sort of already done it, and that wouldn't be a sort of surprise call to anyone to hear. But I think someone like I'm just sort of looking at the young players that we have in Saracens at the moment. I think someone like Ollie Hartley has got huge potential. He's already done really well when he's played for the club. He's come in, and I think he must have played a dozen games now for like a 21, 22-year-old, and really, really performed quite well. And I think, again, you look at his physical capabilities, he's a really big guy.
Yeah.
He's bigger than some of our forwards, and gives us something a bit different in the backs, that maybe we don't have as much size as we would like to have. And having someone like him as a young player who's just going to get better and better, I think, and I hope that he stays around with Sarries for a long time. And it looks to me like he'll have a really good career at Sarries.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I'm going to finish this last bit up by talking about internationals. And, as I said, you got 5 caps for England. Is that something that's still on your radar, getting yourself back into contention for England? Or the other question is, obviously, with the way that you can qualify now, qualification rules, obviously, Italy, who are very resurgent and are having a fantastic Six Nations this year and really, really stepping up. I mean, are they on the radar potentially if England doesn't work out? Or
to be fair, probably not. Just because I do sort of feel a sense of attachment to England, even though I've not played in a long time now, and never played many games for them. But yeah, I don't know. It doesn't really feel right to me to make that switch, to be honest with you. Especially when I sometimes look at the squads that are picked, and some names in there sort of leave me scratch my head a little bit sometimes, and I think, maybe I could sneak back in at one point. So I don't necessarily. I wouldn't want to make the switch, because I wouldn't want to sort of give up myself on. You never know what might happen in the future. There could be an injury here or an injury there to somebody else, and I might be able to sneak back in the England squad if I'm playing well enough. So I don't want to rule myself out if I'm never picked, and that's the coach's decision, and I'm fine with that. But I'd probably regret ruling myself out by switching teams. And yeah, I suppose, but as I said, I've not played in a long time, and I'm not getting any younger, and I think there looks like there's a bit of an attitude to go with some younger players currently, and some of them have done quite well. So I'd probably be surprised if it ever happened to me again. But I just want to. I'll just keep trying to play well for Sarries, and as well as I can for Sarries, because I want to play well for Sarries anyway, and do well for the team. And then I'd be really, really happy if anything else came with it. But also realistic enough to understand that, as I said, I'm not getting any younger, and that's it's a young man's game, isn't it? So yeah.
Well, I mean, I did say jokingly when I saw Ben's try against Wales at 52, as a former number 8 myself, I have now retired from international rugby, because clearly England don't need me any longer. I mean, the fact they never needed me before is a different matter, but there we go. Let's finish this bit here, and we'll hand back to the guys and for the next section there, and then we'll come back and talk the showdown, if that's all right, in our next part. Alex?
Yeah, of course. No worries.
You're listening to the Fezcast.
You're listening to the Fezcast, which is proudly sponsored by the Saracen Supporters Association, and I'm Alison Davis, one of the SSA committee. For a £10 annual subscription, the SSA provides our members with monthly newsletters, virtual and in-person player events, away match ticket allocations, and we organise pre-match gatherings at away matches. We sponsor men's and women's players, and we support the Saracens Foundation Track Club on behalf of our members. On top of all that, every year we have a seasonal SSA badge, which is exclusive to members. Where else can you get that much value for a tenner? Join now at membermojo.co.uk/SSA, or come and see us on match day in the Oasis at the Stonex.
This is the Fezcast.
Oh yeah, thank you to Loz there for part one of his interview, where we've covered off his Saracens career, his international career, and also those great questions about players that he enjoyed playing with and players that perhaps, Marnonu. I mean, what a beast that man was. I mean, I think he's still playing in America, is it? Or he's only just retired. But yeah, I mean, great to hear. George Smith, a bit of an unusual one, Sam, you thought?
Yeah, it was a little bit left field. I mean, look, cracking player. But I was actually trying to figure out like when he would have had the experience of playing too heavily with him. But yeah, I mean, look, cracking player. And Alex is very lucky. I think he was he played a decent amount of international rugby, so has had enough. He would have had a lot of options. You know, there was when I asked that question, I was actually thinking to myself, what games did he play in? What big players would he have played against potentially? But yeah, Smith wasn't the one that popped straight into bed, but fair play to him.
Now, I mean, obviously, there was from the interview, there was a lot of a bit of a bromance going on between him and Billy Vunipola. I mean, obviously, you know, Billy's had some key moments that Alex remembers. That try against Leinster, where he said he was right behind him as he scored that try against Leinster. You know, and Barry, it sort of goes back to something I often say about rugby players, is that you get rugby players who score tries, and then you get rugby players who struggle to score tries. And Billy's one of those players that, and I used to say I was the same. I'm not saying I'm the same as Billy Vunipola, of course, you know. But, and Ben Earl's very much the same. He's seen it this year in the Six Nations, that you get a sniff of that try line, and they're either going to score or they're going to put somebody in to score, which Ben did brilliantly for Marcus Smith on the weekend as well, Barry.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, forwards love tries, and we love to see forwards getting tries. I mean, Ben has scored quite a few for us. Not so much this season, but certainly last season. And his trademark double thumbs up celebration has been. We look forward to seeing it again. But yeah, it's great when forwards score tries, even number 8s, Jez.
Well, you know, I mean, years ago when I was scoring tries for number 8, it was because our front row had shoved the pack over. I mean, these days you're expecting to be a little bit more dynamic around the pitch, and certainly, you know, Ben Earl is that. But look, yeah, fantastic interview there from Loz, and we'll hear from Loz again at the end of this show when we talk about the Showdown that's coming up. But we do need to speak about Super Saturday, and also I think we need to speak about the Six Nations as a whole. And I'm just going to throw something out there very quickly, right? So the table finished off: Ireland, France, England, Scotland, Italy, Wales. I actually think there's a case to be made that the table really should have some weighting on it. And if you look at how teams performed, I think the table really, based on not the results, but on how people improved, how they performed. Italy, England, Ireland, France, Scotland, Wales. Ireland's failed. They didn't get the Grand Slam, you know, and they went in there expecting to get a Grand Slam. France had an absolute shocking start to the tournament. Scotland did what they always do, got up for the England game and then failed to back it up following that. And Wales were an absolute omni-shambles. I think I did put it up on Facebook today, the joke about Gwyndaf driving home on Saturday night, pulling into the drive, and Nafanwi coming out and saying, Gwyndaf, what happened to the car? You know, it's covered in trees and bushes and mud, and is that blood? He said, oh yes, Nafanwi, I hit that one in Gatland as I left Cardiff tonight. She says, well, that explains the blood. What about the rest of it? He says, oh, he tried escaping across the park. As it says, sequels that are not as good as the original, Jaws of the Revenge and Warren Gatland, the Wales coach. I mean, let's start with Wales. They were first up, Barry. They were an absolute shambles of the weekend. And the result really did flatten them being as close as it was.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they will be the only side who will be looking at the Six Nations as a whole and feeling exceptionally disappointed. Everyone else has got something to take from that, even if it's just Scotland retaining the Calcutta Cup. But it's hard to see. It's hard to see where Wales go from here. You're right. Bringing back Gatland was obviously a gamble, I suppose, and it looks now like it was something that was done in the heat of the moment, and it doesn't really look like a wise choice. And frankly, they look a mess.
They do. I mean, I think they've got to have a complete and utter. I mean, the whole game in Wales needs some real, struggle. And I think what brought it home to me is the fact that Nick Tompkins, who has been one of our most consistent players over the last 4 to 5 seasons at Saracens, Sam, on Saturday, he couldn't have caught a fish in an aquarium, could he?
Yeah, well, I think it was one of the commentators might have said it was they just didn't really know where they were meant to be. There was such a lack of disorganisation, which is not necessarily something that Wales is famous for. And like you say, Tompkins is one of those players where he never falls below a certain standard. You're always going to get at least a 6 out of 10 from him, always. And he definitely went below that, I think, at the weekend. But I think he was just one player in a terrible. He was one cog in a really terrible mess, basically. Although I do have a bit of a controversial thing that I've been saying about Wales for quite some time now, which is that this and maybe one other season might be the exception in the other direction. But I've always said I think Wales are pretty much the same every year. It just depends how everyone else plays. If they're rubbish, they win the Grand Slam. If everyone else plays all right, Wales finish towards the bottom. And I do think they were poor this year. Absolutely, I do. But Italy were the best they've been in a long time. Scotland were improved. And then England were improved. And then, of course, you got France and Ireland, who Wales are never going to compete against. So this might be a slight exception to it. But I do believe that Wales have kind of been on a very steady decline for a long time. I think you hit the nail on the head with the the regional setup they have there hasn't really worked for quite a number of years, and they don't really know what to do there. And unfortunately, what happened this season in the Six Nations is the ultimate result of all of that. I think I do feel. I can't believe I'm saying this. I feel a bit sorry for the Welsh fans, to be honest, because they've got a massive passion for this sport in that country. And I think the fans have been massively let down. So, Wales are the team I love to beat the most, but I love to beat them more as an England fan when they're firing. You don't like beating a poor team. So I do hope they come back, and I think they will. I think they've got too much talent in the country for them to be complete whipping dogs for too much longer. But it all depends whether lightning can strike twice, and next year Italy can keep going moving forward, because I think they had a cracking tournament, and even the games that they lost, they definitely looked like they'd taken a massive step in the right direction. So that as well didn't help Wales.
Well, I'm going to make a bold statement here. You've made a bold statement, Sam. I'm going to make a bold statement. And I think it's worth going down the bookies and putting £10 on that Italy, within 5 seasons, will win a Six Nations championship. I think they have really improved hugely. And one of the reasons I say that is I look at the players coming through. And these lads that have performed so well, outside of like Garbisi and Lamaro and perhaps Rutzer, there's quite a few players who are still relatively inexperienced but have played at a really high level. And we're going to talk about it as we go through and shout a name as and when you want to. But if there was one player in the Six Nations who's impressed me, who I think would fit in at Saracens beautifully, it's the inside centre, Thomas Menoncello. I think he has been exceptional. And I've actually said it on more than one occasion. Menoncello and Brex, the Italian centre partnership, reminds me hugely of Walter Little and Frank Bunce for New Zealand going back 30 years. Power, defensive solidity, but with skills as well and pace. And, that's as high a compliment as I can play anybody, Barry.
Yeah, Italy are definitely on the up. I'm not quite sure I'm going to be popping down the bookies and putting a tenner on it. But you can certainly see them improving. As you mentioned, their under 20s are a heck of a side as well. Now, that doesn't always translate to senior rugby. I mean, for years, England used to turn up and win the under 20s tournament, and they have again this year, of course. But that's not always fed through. There's still a drop off of players from that. But Italy are a young side. They will improve further. The future does look bright for them. Not quite sure I can see them winning a championship yet. Just to go back on Wales slightly, I'm of an age when, a bit like Sam said, it's enjoyable to beat the Welsh. We like beating the Welsh because at one point it was virtually bloody impossible. But they are in a sad state now, and it is sad to see. The Six Nations needs a strong, competitive Welsh side in it because their fans have got the passion and everything else, and we need them back in that tournament as competitors, not just as making up the numbers, which they seem to be this season.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's move on to the second game on Saturday, Ireland versus Scotland, and in particular, we've mentioned Nick Tompkins as not having his greatest moment in an international shirt. Someone who has really sprung into the international limelight, and I cannot understand why Gregor Townsend didn't pick him from the start. He started 2 matches for Scotland. He's come on as a sub in another match against England. And okay, the 2 games he started, Scotland lost both those games, but Andy Christie has got into my team of the tournament. I think he's had such a huge impact, an impact we knew that he would have, Sam, but I think he's exceeded expectations.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's not a surprise to us, is it? Let's be honest. We've seen his progression. He burst onto the scene a couple of years ago, and since then has just gone from strength to strength to strength. I think one of Christie's massive attributes is his head. I think he's a really intelligent player. I think he gets into the right positions. He's available. He picks lines of running like a centre sometimes. He's just cracking, and he's only going to get better. He's still a young lad, and he really is. I think the future at Scotland's back row. And I think they need to start thinking about players that work with Andy Christie rather than whether Andy Christie plays with other players. I think it's only good for Saracens as well, having somebody like that get that international experience, because we've already got a relatively strong sort of back five options, and having Andy get even better and better and better is only gonna help that. So front row we might need a little bit of work on, but the back five of the pack at the moment, we've got so many options, and having Andy play the way he is for Scotland is only going to help that.
Absolutely, 100%. Now, Barry, I made the comment earlier on when I ranked the teams. I said that Ireland, for me, are the third best team in this competition because at the end of the day, they wanted a Grand Slam, didn't they? And probably to an element, that's to their detriment against England, because I think they expected a Grand Slam a little bit. Certainly their media did, and some former players who have been very, very quiet, even with them winning the championship, because I think they do know that the championship probably wasn't enough for them, Barry.
It's a big call, though, putting them third in a value-added table, because just looking at it, they scored more points than anyone else. They conceded fewer than anyone else across the tournament, and obviously won 4 out of 5 and almost won the 5th one as well. So, it won't do them too much harm to have won it without a Grand Slam. It will give them something else another chance to reset, and they certainly will kick on from there. There's too many good players in that side not to kick on and improve again. And they've got 3 years to keep it going to the next World Cup, where they can get knocked out in the quarterfinals again.
Well,
I saw something a little controversial on Twitter. Somebody made a comment, and I actually replied with something that I think ended up being a little bit more controversial. And someone was talking about the Sexton effect, and saying, was that little bit of class missing with Johnny not being there, him knowing the team so well and all that kind of stuff. And I went back and I said, I completely disagree. I actually think Jack Crowley's a cracking player. And I actually went back and I said Ireland might have won the World Cup if they got rid of Sexton earlier and given Jack Crowley a go, because the boy's got talent, and I think they held on to him too long. And then on the back of that, I think they would have got the Grand Slam this year. That would have been just enough. Give Jack Crowley 18 months in that 10 shirt before this tournament, then they win the Grand Slam.
Well, absolutely. I 100% agree with you, Sam. I've actually said this year, particularly against France, that Ireland looked better without Johnny Sexton in there. In the same way as on Saturday, Scotland, so you got a world-class player in Duhan van der Merwe, but he felt like he had to do everything. And I think that's the problem that sometimes you get. And we sometimes see it with Faz at Saracens. Sometimes you get the impression that maybe he's trying to do too much himself. And hopefully, he has learned to relax a little bit more. And when he does relax and allows other players, gives them their heads. And you've said it about Manu Vunipola as well, playing a standoff, that if, Alex Good just lets him get on with it, he looks a better player. And that's that balancing act that sometimes struggled. And I don't think Johnny Sexton ever really learned that. But you're absolutely right. Would Jack Crowley be your player that potentially you would like to see at Saracens, Barry, given that we've got a place available at standoff?
Well, before we came on air, I did say that you could pick virtually any of the Irish team and plonk them into Saracens quite happily. Jack Crowley was certainly one that I was thinking of listing, but he's the obvious choice, obviously, with Faz moving on, and at the moment we don't have a recognised 10. Well, we have a couple of players who can play 10, but we don't really know for certain who's going to be playing there next season. I mean, if he was available, you'd certainly want to give him a go, wouldn't you?
Absolutely. Well, let's move on to the England-France game and say it was a cracking game of rugby, number one. Now, I think I saw a little bit of, and I got involved in a little bit of debates on Facebook about, England has gone back to basics. They're kicking the ball away in the first 20 minutes. I think in that first 20 minutes, France came firing out at them, and England just had to stay in the fight. They had to dog it out, and I think actually they did. And actually, Alex Mitchell's box kicking was pretty spot on, and I think Elliot Daly in particular made the best of it. Henry Slade had his best game in an England shirt for quite a while. I think Tommy Freeman looks to the man of Bourne on the other wing. You just saw players really, stayed in the fight. Ollie Lawrence then gets a try just before half time. And Johnny Wilkinson on comms said it, didn't he? He said, I think England could really go on and win this. And he wasn't far wrong. And actually, other than a soft penalty at the end, which we're not going to blame because, it's just one moment in 80-odd minutes of rugby, but it was a soft penalty to give away to lose the game. And I think England had actually done enough to win that game. And if you bear in mind, OK, no Dupont, no Entermac, but last year that French team came to Twickenham and put 50-odd points on us, playing a similar brand of rugby. And this time we competed with them. OK, Marcus Smith came on and made no decision at all when he had the first opportunity. But then after that, I think he stood up in defence. George Ford stood up in defence with some huge men running at them, Barry. And, we stood up, we stayed in the fight. And then once we got a toe on, once the French pack in particular had begun to slow down and began to breathe heavily, and, they made an awful lot of changes early in that second half because of the pressure and the pace that England were playing with. And this is the best I've seen England play since that World Cup semi-final against New Zealand in 2019. What Eddie Jones should have built on that in that semi-final in 2019, and he never did. And I don't understand why he didn't. Borthwick now has come in. He's got some basics right. He's got a new defensive plan, but there are young lads there who are being given the opportunity to play at pace and to make decisions. And sometimes they won't come off. And sometimes they'll make a mistake. And sometimes Henry Slade will go herring out of defence and create a massive, great dog leg. But they're trying to do stuff. They're trying to play a decent, exciting brand of rugby. And I think that was great to see, Barry.
Yeah, I think if we concentrate on our attacking and almost do the old Kevin Keegan thing. It almost doesn't matter how many points you concede. As long as you score one more, then you're going to win. But it's very difficult to complain too much about players who make the odd defensive misread and make the odd mistake. I mean, Slade's been picked out. Smith was picked out for a little bit of abuse afterwards as well, and people forget that's not actually his position he was playing, and he certainly wasn't intended to be playing that much of the game out of position either. So, you know, they did very well on Saturday. Could well have easily won that game and finished second in the tournament, which would have been wildly exceeding everyone's expectations, I think. So, England had a decent tournament. Borthwick will be happy. Most of the fans will be happy. He's got some challenges there, though, because he's got to replace probably his two starting props. If not now, then very, very soon. And also, he needs another 9 in there as well, because he can't see Kerr going on for too much longer.
Well, Kerr's announced his retirement, hasn't he? I think, and that's fair dues. I mean, Harry Randall was called up. Ben Spencer seems to have blotted his copybook, perhaps again. I don't know. Something's gone on there, that he's not getting those opportunities, and we don't know what goes on behind those closed doors. I do think that keeping players like Dan Cole, who got into my team of the tournament, because I think he did what every tight head needs to do, which is be a platform, and he did it brilliantly well. Danny Kerr, they kept those players going, knowing that you lost Ben Youngs, you lost Owen Farrell, you lost Courtney Laws. You couldn't then jettison all that, because that would have been, we would have been like Wales, absolutely 100% like Wales this season. So he's done an evolution, not a revolution, and I think it's been really good how he's done it. And he's actually kept players who've bought into that new way. I mean, Dan Cole, some of the runs he was doing, chasing down kicks and getting to make turnovers as a tight head block forward. Okay, he might only have done it for 40 minutes, but he did it well for 40 minutes, and that's all you can ask for, isn't it, Sam?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, the way you've just put it there is absolutely spot on. It's an evolution, not a revolution. Steve Borthwick, I think it was either this week or last week, I can't remember. Someone asked him about the transition, this controversial word that's been used all the time that people are getting a bit bored of. But he said, look, I came into this job with a very clear short-term plan and no long-term plan, which was I needed to get us ready for a World Cup and I needed us to compete in a World Cup. Beyond that, I couldn't really think too heavily about it. And, this is now the restart. This is the restart. So we are an England team at the moment. It's exciting to see because I think we've got a little change in leadership. I think, as it turns out, Jamie George was an inspired choice to captain the side. He really seems to be engaging with the England fans, which is awesome to see. But this is an England team that are still, to a certain extent, figuring themselves out a little bit. There are younger players in there that don't have too many caps. They're moulding with players that have got a lot of caps, but are trying to now figure out a way of playing a slightly different brand of rugby. So, you're going to have these kind of mistakes that we've already alluded to. But I think it's a very exciting time to be an England fan. I don't think we're world beaters just yet. Borthwick was come out and said, we've nearly beat, and then we've beat the two best teams in the world. On a consistent basis, we're not going to win those games every single week, but we're certainly heading in the right direction. As a Saracens fan, it's amazing to see someone like Ben Earl absolutely ripping the international stage apart, as we know that he's been able to do for a while and just hasn't really been given the chance. I think we're a fresh and exciting nation to watch play rugby at the moment, and we haven't really been able to say that for quite a long time, have we?
No, absolutely not. I mean, we'll leave Ben Earl to last because I think he deserves top billing. You mentioned Jamie as captain. I do also have to mention Marrow, who there's a number of things here. One, Theo Dan, as a young player with not a great deal of experience, is being trusted to finish out games, whereas World Cup even, Jamie was playing 78 minutes of every game. So, we're seeing a progression there from Theo. That's great, and he's keeping the likes of Luke Cowan-Dickey, Jamie Plummer, These players with a bit more experience out of the loop, as it were. But you're right, Jamie has captained the team really well. But Maro has captained the last 20 minutes of every game when Jamie's come off. And again, has done it really, really well in a different way, a very much more, I'd love to say intelligent way of doing things, but a more measured, calm, collected way of doing it. Whilst also retaining his performance levels at the very high. He got in along with Tag Burn as my two locks for this tournament. And I just think that, he's back to being an absolute nuisance at the breakdown and the line out. He's calling line outs, he's reading line outs brilliantly. And he's really stepped up and proven himself to be one of, if not the best lock forwards in the world at the moment, Barry.
Yeah, both Jamie and Mauro, you're right. They're both intelligent captains in the fact that they handle the referees slightly different to what we've seen before with England captains, and their approach to it is definitely up there with the best, and I think they do complement each other, and they work well as a team. You can see Mauro's game's improved immeasurably since the last Six Nations, and he's back to almost the level that he was at sort of 3-4 years ago, just before COVID. Cracking player, and obviously we're delighted that he's staying with us for next season as well.
Absolutely.
I've got a quick question for the two of you on that. Going into next year, a Fazless Saracens, do you think that possibly we've kind of seen a bit of a precursor to what that's going to be like with Farrell not playing for England, in that we've seen our players, I think, that backbone of the pack with Jamie and then Theo, Itoje, Ben Earl, all stepping up as leaders. Have they perhaps been a little bit in Farrell's shadow, both internationally and domestically, and they now have that opportunity to show off the leadership skills that they've got a little bit more, and we might see a little bit more of that at Saracens next year?
I actually agree with you. I mean, I mentioned earlier on I'm a West Ham fan, and so last year we had Declan Rice as our captain, and we won a European trophy, and then we sold him to Arsenal for 105 million quid, which is a great bit of business because we bought Alvarez, James Ward-Prowse, quality players, and actually West Ham are probably playing better football this year when it clicks than without Declan Rice, and in particular one player, Thomas Souček, who's a senior player who stepped up and out of Declan Rice's shadow and has improved. And I think you're right, there could be an element of that. And, like Alex Lozowski is another one who is going to be a senior player and part of that leadership gang. And yeah, I think you're absolutely right. There's, Mark McCall, we trust Mark McCall implicitly. And I think, as we've often said, Sam, we do not regret letting players go. And when you're talking about Owen Farrell and saying we won't regret him going, of course we're going to regret him going because he's such a fabric of the club. But, it's not going to be the disaster perhaps we would first think it would be. But Ben Earl's the one we got to mention because, as I say, Ben Earl, the man that Eddie Jones said was too small to play international rugby, has ripped up trees this tournament and has been, for me, the player of the tournament, And he's been up against some pretty spectacularly good number 8s, in particular this weekend, Gregory Audrey, who is one of my favourite players outside of Saracens. And I think he's taken back row play and a number 8 play to an extent. I'll tell you how good his number 8 play is. I've announced my retirement from international rugby because England no longer need me as a number 8. Okay, they never needed me before. I knew my boots were always ready. But, all joking aside, Ben Earl has developed the game, not just his game, but the game of number 8 back row play to a different level to where we've seen it before. Billy Vunipola did it once before. Talupe Faletau did it before. But going further back then, Zinzan Brook, Buck Shelford, Dean Richards, these people that I admired and wanted to be like. He's taken it to another level. And I mean, he's scored tries, he's set up tries, he's made more carries, more yards, more turnovers. I mean, the bloke's just an absolute machine.
Yeah, I see him as he's a little bit like if you mix together the sort of the turnover game of like a Pocock or a Hooper, and then with a bit of a running game at 8 that you might have seen like Sam Simmons in his absolute prime a few years ago. He's managed to pull all those things together and do what none of those three players seem to do, which was he smiles while he's doing it. And he seems to be just enjoying his rugby so much at the moment. And it's great to see both for England and for Saracens. And I get it wrong a lot. I get a lot of things wrong, but I remember watching Ben for the first time a couple of years ago, and I turned to my dad and I said, "That boy is going to be special one day, and I'll take that." It's rule of averages. I had to get something right at some point.
Oh, absolutely. Look, I mean, yeah. All credit to Ben, and as I say, player of the tournament in everybody's team. I mean, he's a first name down on every pundit's team of the year, and all credit to him. Absolutely fantastic. Shall we have a break there? Have a word from one of the jingles. We'll play in the part 2 of Loz's interview, where he chats about playing at the Tottenham Stadium and watching Spurs lose at the Tottenham Stadium, which I did very well not to laugh at, actually, to be perfectly honest with you. But there we go.
You're listening to the Fezcast.
Hi, Alex Lozowski here, Director of Rugby for Saracens Women. You're listening to the Saracens Fezcast.
This is the Fezcast.
Oh, well, welcome back to part 2 of our interview with Alex Lozowski from big game coming up this weekend, because although we're recording this Friday before it's going out Wednesday morning, the next game for Saracens is against the old enemy, against Quins, who we've already talked about in part 1 as being one of your favourite games to play against, and it's always a game everybody gets up for. But at the Tottenham Stadium, which, yeah, enemy country for me being a West Ham fan, but I'm sure it's going to be a fantastic event. My first time there, but I suppose the question, Alex, is, I mean, it's a long break, isn't it? This Six Nations break. For you, obviously, you're injured, you're not playing. But for the lads there, they've gone a long time without playing any real meaningful rugby other than the game against Leinster. I mean, how is it in camp at the moment? How at what level are the guys? I mean, are they absolutely ripping up seats and eating raw meat and raring to go?
No, I think they're looking in real good shape. The training hasn't let off. There was a week off for the boys, which was deserved really, because I think up until the break, it's sort of been 22 or 23 games in a row since August or September or something, where every weekend was a game. So yeah, that break was needed, and it's the boys have come back from that feeling a bit more refreshed. And I think the last 5 or 6 weeks they've been back in training every day as if there was a game to be played, and I think they're just dying to play now. So yeah, I'm expecting them to be in good shape, and obviously we always get excited to play against Harlequins, and that'll be no different, especially at Tottenham Stadium. So. Let's hopefully we can get off to this, this second half of the season, get off to a good start.
Of course, I mean, the one thing is, I mean, normally, we've got a lot of internationals who've been away, and we don't know how they'll be integrated back into the side, whether they'll come back in, whether they'll have a break or anything. But unlike previous years, we got, a fair amount of players, and in particular, 3 pretty important players in Maku and Billy, and obviously the skipper, Faz, who haven't played internationals this time. So, whereas before, perhaps we were looking at and thinking, are they going to come back in after a hard Six Nations? They're there ready to go as well, aren't they?
Yeah, and they've been there the whole time as well. So they've, managed. And these are guys who've played so many games over the years that it's, and I suppose so many games for England, over the years that, we've missed out on having those guys around the club during these periods. And to have them here this time can only be a good thing for the team. And they've had a real positive impact on it. So I think those guys will be playing, and like you say, the guys coming back from the Six Nations will be wanting to play as well, because I think that's something that those guys actually, in fact, over the years, I think that was their point of difference, maybe from England players playing for other clubs, is that when they did get back, they were very, very keen to play for the club. And maybe it would be easy to not take it as seriously as England, or do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
That type of, I've had a tough Six Nations. Maybe I could do with a bit of a rest, but our England players have always come back and really, like, not just dip their toe in, but really sort of dived headfirst back into the Sarries season, and that's really helped us. So I think the boys who are now playing for England or playing in the Six Nations, having seen those guys do that over the years and their attitude towards it, hopefully they'll be exactly the same. I'm sure they will be exactly the same, where they come back and they're, chomping at the bit to play for Saracens again, because that's the way it's always been at this club.
Well, indeed, and as I said, the players who've been playing away for their countries have, to a man, have been ripping up trees and been performing exceptionally well. I mean, not only Ben, who we've already mentioned, and Andy, but Maro's been at his very best. Jamie's captained the country brilliantly, I think, and Nick in Wales has done well, and we called obviously for this weekend. I mean, it's all good, isn't it? And they come back at that level, then we're laughing. What I wanted to ask you about is, I've never been to the Tottenham Stadium. This is my first time at the Showdown. Couldn't make it last time, but tell us about the stadium. It is impressive. As much as this is catching me in my throat and everything, it is an impressive stadium, isn't it?
Yeah, no, it is. I'm biased because I'm a Tottenham fan who's been there quite a few times and really enjoyed it. But yeah, it really is. It really is an impressive stadium. I don't think there's a bad seat in the house, and that's saying something for a 62,000 seater stadium. You feel as a supporter that you're like right on top of the pitch, and that you've got like you're not on it, obviously, not on the pitch, but you're right there, and you can almost sort of feel the action going on the field. As a player, you can feel that atmosphere and that environment too. So on both sides, it's really cool. I think there's plenty to do, sort of places to eat, places to drink. So I feel like an experience for supporters for like a day out. I think it's with the fan zones and all the rest of it, and hopefully a good game of rugby. It shouldn't get too much better than that, really. I don't think so. I've been there to watch Tottenham, and I've watched us lose a few games, so I'm looking forward to getting up there and seeing a good Sarries win.
Well, absolutely. Just tell us, though, from the point of view from the players, how important is it that you get a crowd there that's vocal, that's supportive, that's right behind it? The old cliche about being the 16th man on the pitch. How important is it that everybody there gets behind the team?
Oh yeah, no. As players, we really, really appreciate it. Obviously, we appreciate people coming out and watching, and it'd be easy enough to just sort of stay at home and watching the telly for a lot of people. So we appreciate people coming to the stadium, whether that's in StoneX as well, where we've had some brilliant crowds over the years and some brilliant atmospheres that have helped us come back in games, or pull away in games and get some really important results over the years, sort of feeding off the crowd. So we definitely look at that and know that it's important to us. So I think it'll be no different in this next weekend, when it's gonna be a big crowd, and the boys enjoy playing in front of big crowds. So well, hopefully there's as many people as possible. It looks like it's going to be pretty much sold out, so that's brilliant.
Oh, absolutely. Look, well, we're really looking forward to it. We're really looking forward to seeing the lads out in the field, but also we're really also looking forward to seeing you back on the pitch, Alex. And best of luck with the rehabilitation, and hope the restart goes very well for us. I'm sure it will do with all the support you got from the club and everything.
Thank you.
Make sure you look out for us, guys. We'll be wearing our Fezcast hoodies. You see us, so do say hi to us.
Yeah,
Or at the game, you see us, and we'll perhaps have a pint or something. But yeah, no, Alex, thank you very much for joining us on the Fezcast. As we always say, next time we see the lads and everything, send our best to them and give all our best wishes and good luck from us on the Fezcast, and obviously the fans as a wider unit. And we'll say thank you for your time and all the best.
No problem. Thanks, guys. And see you next weekend and see you soon.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Alex. That's fantastic.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Hi, this is Petrus Duplessis, and you are listening to the Fezcast.
This is the Fezcast.
Again, thanks to Loz for joining me last Friday night and talking about the showdown that's coming up this Saturday at the Tottenham Stadium on White Hart Lane. So I can't resist it, Sam. I can't resist it, being a West Ham fan. And I thought I did very well not to get into that side of things. But look, it is a fantastic stadium. I've not been there. I've seen it on the telly. I've seen programs where they talked about when they do American football there and how they bring the pitch in and everything. They spend an awful lot of money there and have created something that I'm really looking forward to going to. Now, you two guys, you've been there before, haven't you, Barry?
Yeah, I've been to both the previous showdowns, sat in different places, and I'm sitting somewhere different again this time as well. So, it is a fantastic stadium. It's just a shame it's at the end of a very, very long walk.
Well, indeed, yeah.
Got to upgrade, get a cab.
You rich people, you can do that, can't you? I should be parking down at Westfield and catching a train across the Seven Sisters and see how it goes. But the interesting thing is what we talked about first before we talked about the actual atmosphere and everything with Loz was about what the training's been like for the lads, and obviously the intensity has been up there. They've had some time off, had some R&R, and he, Loz was saying, for him, obviously he's not been involved this year with his operation. It's great to hear that he's going to be back running soon as well. But they've obviously used this. They had the game against Leinster, which was a great run out for a lot of people. We don't know yet who's going to come back in, who's not going to be there. I would, think that potentially, because you've got such a core of players like Jamie, like Marrow, like Ben, all coming back in. I think, they're on such a high that you'd be foolish not to play them. But then, of course, you've got the likes of Billy and Matthew Vunipola, Owen Farrell, who haven't been playing international rugby this time for the first time in a long, long time. So they're going to be fresh. It's an intriguing one and an intriguing headache for Mark McCall and Joe Shaw about what they do, Sam.
Yeah, look, it's going to be a nice day out. The stadium's cracking. They do need to train the guys how to pour a decent Guinness, but apart from that, it is you can't fault the stadium at all. The atmosphere should be fantastic, but let's get back to the nitty gritty of this. This is a massive game for Saracens. This is a huge game for Saracens because if we win, we go second, and then we set up a potential table topper against Northampton the following week. This is a pivotal part of our season, and we can't. This isn't a jolly. It's nice for the fans, but from a team, they won't be talking about, it's a nice day out. It is down to business. This is a huge, huge game, and we got to win it first and foremost. We put the team out to win this game. We're in the part of the season that we tend to enjoy, which is the run-in. We tend to be very, very good in the run-ins. So we got to get back to business. I'm afraid parties, vacation's finished. But let's get back on the pitch and let's win the game first and foremost. And if the atmosphere is great and they learn how to pour Guinness, it might be better still. But first and foremost, we've got to win that game.
Well, absolutely, I totally agree with you. Particularly with the run-in being a lot shorter than what it normally is with the reduction on teams in the league. But Loz was very keen to talk about the atmosphere and what us as fans can bring to the ground on Saturday, Barry. And I think that is vitally important that, we want people to be there and to enjoy the experience. But at the end of the day, we need to be a little bit hostile as well, and let Quinn's players at least know that they're in our patch, in our big game, and it's our, we don't want to be arrogant, don't want to be overconfident, but you come into our backyard now and our big stadium. It ain't your big stadium just over the road. It's our big stadium, and we've really got to bring that atmosphere, make it a fortress, haven't we, Barry?
Yeah, we all need to get behind this team. As you say, 6 games to go in the run-in, and just looking at the table in front of me, there's 7 points in between Harlequins in second and Bristol in eighth. It's tighter than it's ever been, or certainly as far as I can remember it going back. And every game is going to be a potential cup final almost. We need to get as many points as we can out of every game, and let's hope the fans get right behind the players, and the players can respond to it. And if the players need any further inspiration, they could do worse and have a quick tour of the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium and look at an empty trophy cabinet and worry that might be us this season.
Well, absolutely. Yeah, 100%. Just before we go, I got a couple of parish notices to get through. And first of all, talking about trophies. Well, not quite a trophy, but 25 quid's going the way of Charlie Mannings, John's boy, who won the Six Nations prediction game that I won. And Barry, we won't mention where you came, but yeah, I have 2 dogs. One of them came last but one, and the other one came third. Mungo came third. Don't ask me how, but they were both above you, Barry. And well done to my wife Shazza as well, who came second. So, I mean, I've got complete, it's as bad as you, Barry. I haven't got bragging rights in my own home on the prediction.
For next year, listeners, if anyone's got a goldfish that would like to prove to be a better pundit than me, then please get in touch with us via the usual channels, and we'll enter your goldfish, and you can all beat me again.
Well, indeed, absolutely. Yeah, well, that was all good fun. The other thing, obviously, starting this week is the Women's Six Nations. And although there's games on this weekend, Joe and I are going to record a preview on Wednesday to go out next week after the first round of games, which is kind of like a preview review. We'll wing it somehow like we do with everything else, Sam.
Well, why don't you just record it afterwards?
Well, we could do. Well, we'll wait. We'll do something. We've got to fit around everybody.
Always do it the hard way around.
Yeah, absolutely. We make it interesting enough. And else. Look, thank you everybody for joining us tonight. Thank you, Sam. Thank you, Barry, for your time. Thank you again to Alex Lozowski for joining me and taking out a chunk of time on his Friday evening to talk to us in 2 fascinating interviews there. I really enjoyed doing those. And again, yeah, thank you to Ollie for organising that. And I believe that he's using our interview as part of the programme as well, and giving us full credit for it as well, which is really, really good as well. So, yeah, no, fantastic there. And again, congratulations to all of our internationals, and welcome back to the coalface, ready for Quins on Saturday. So, yeah, let's send the mighty Quinn back with their tails between their legs.
This is the Fezcast.